Is that good? Is that too much? Okay.
Are we all good? Just don't move.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually using my iPad. Is that okay? I'm gonna try, but otherwise I don't think I think it's gonna fall.
In
the middle of the show. Okay. Like, don't move.
Do I have too much headroom, Mark? Is that too much? Okay.
Good evening and welcome to the Week in Review. I'm Brandis Friedman. Paris Schutz has the night off. I'll be joined by our Week in Review guests in just a moment, but first, here are some of today's top stories. After being vandalized and after serving as the site of protests that turned violent, the city's Christopher Columbus statues have both been removed, but the mayor's office says only temporarily. Overnight, crews used a large crane to remove the Columbus statue in Grant Park as a small crowd cheered. The second statue in Little Italy's Arago Park was removed early this morning. The mayor's office says the removals were in response to the demonstrations that became unsafe for both protesters and police, as well as efforts by individuals to independently pull the statue down in an extremely dangerous manner. That's a direct quote. Members of the city's Italian-American community, though, have called the move an insult to the Italian-Americans who helped build this country. Mayor Lightfoot's office continues to promise there'll be a process for assessing the city's monuments and memorials. It's been 6 months since the first COVID-19 case was diagnosed in Illinois, and today another 1,500 people have tested positive for the coronavirus in Illinois, bringing the statewide total to more than 168,000. State health officials also report an additional 19 deaths related to the illness, for a total of just under 7,400 deaths. Additionally, the Illinois Department of Public Health warns that 4 Illinois counties are considered to be at a warning level, meaning they're seeing increased outbreaks because of risky behavior. Those counties are Adams, LaSalle, Peoria, and Randolph. Cyclists, runners, and walkers can now return to the Lakefront Trail between Oak and Ohio Streets. The Chicago Park District opened the stretch today after completing extensive repair work due to erosion, providing a continuous 18-mile path from Edgewater to South Shore. The city reminds users, though, that while the trail is open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., to please keep it moving. The lakefront parking lots remain closed to prevent large groups from gathering. Outdoor fitness equipment, athletic fields, and beaches remain closed as well. Our colleagues at ABC 7 Chicago tonight mourned the loss of longtime meteorologist Jerry Taft. Taft joined the station back in 1984, and he served there as a meteorologist for 33 years until his retirement in 2018. His colleagues say he was well known for his sense of humor and ability to laugh at his mistakes. ABC 7 says Taft died peacefully at his home Thursday night, surrounded by his family. So joining us now from various locations around town are Craig Delamore of WBBM News Radio, Courtney Guzman of WGN TV News, Sarah Schulte of ABC 7 News, and Sarah Karp of WBEZ. Welcome, everyone. Let's get right to it.
Hi.
Hi. So,
Hey.
Sarah Schulte, you worked with Jerry Taft. Our condolences on his passing. How are you remembering him?
Oh, God. Jerry, I think we've heard it all. Jerry was so funny. I mean, he had such a great sense of humor. And he'll always be known for this roar, this laugh that he always had. everyone has stories. Well, the story that I always recall is I remember when I got engaged. Everyone was saying, "Oh, congratulations!" And Jerry came right up to me and he said, "Hey, if you want advice on what kind of wedding you have, I've had all of them. I've had the city hall wedding, I've had the wedding, I've had the church wedding, and that was Jerry's greatest gift is he knew how to laugh at himself, and I think that was one thing that I certainly will always remember about him. But I mean, we all cover. Not great news every day, right? And so when I, walked into the studio ready to present my story, Jerry was always there. And the one thing is he just always had a smile on his face and a laugh. And it always made you feel so good, especially when you spent the day covering something that was really bad.
I'm sure that laugh will be remembered.
Oh, completely.
One thing that some folks may not miss, some folks, depends on who you ask, the Columbus statues that were temporarily removed by Mayor Lori Lightfoot from 2 locations after activists clashed with the CPD earlier this week. Craig, let's start with you. Is this reminiscent of Daley chopping up Meigs Field in the middle of the night?
It was in the very first piece that I wrote that, yes, it is indeed reminiscent of that, partly because of just the surprise, but also that it happened over the cover of darkness, that it was an ongoing controversy that got resolved while everybody was asleep. That is kind of a Daley move. In fact, somebody said to me that it was going to be like Scooby-Doo, that at the end they pull off the mask and it's really Daley under there.
Although, I mean, the big word in all this is temporary. Certainly when Daley did it, there was nothing temporary about it. He did it and he knew that was going to be permanent. Now, I think the question is, will it really be temporary? I mean, how long will it be temporary?
Sarah Karp, do you think this was wise after Chicago police clashed with protesters last weekend?
In a way, I do. I mean, I do hear her saying that this was that there was a danger because you saw last weekend that there was, people tugging at it and pulling at it. And you just had this fear that there are all these young people out there. And what if one of them, got struck by this statue? That would have been horrible. And then also, there's a lot of rage on the streets, and a lot of young people were really, really pushing for this. And I think that this at least resolves it for a moment. But I do think eventually she's going to have to confront the fact that Italian Americans really want the statue, and not all of them. There's a group that's actually against having the statue of Columbus there. But do you replace it with somebody who is more honorable according to all of Chicago? And I think that they're going to have to talk about that. And it'll be interesting when they sort of start going through every statue and seeing what is the history of all the people who have statues, because I'm sure dig in a little deep and you're going to find a lot of places are going to have name changes or different statues. A park in Chicago, Douglas Park, was renamed this week, which was also a victory of young people. It's really them who are sort of shining the light on this history. So
well, and then Courtney Guzman, what do you think is? Go ahead, Craig.
Brandis, I was just going to say that is very much the point, is the fact that this is seen and it has been celebrated as a victory for those who are part of the protest and the Black Lives Matters movement. You saw the party outside of Mayor Lightfoot's home. I mean, we had a DJ and everything. I mean, it was filled. The streets were filled in celebration of the fact that this statue was taken down. This is exactly what protesters were hoping for. Now, interestingly enough, we saw the FOP president out there very upset and actually debating with people at the scene and making some disparaging comments, actually telling some people that they don't belong in this country, which was very disheartening to hear because that's some of the video that's gone viral from that scene. But the implications of this statue have been huge, especially since last Friday when we saw that big clash between police and protesters, and then we saw the following protest that came just days later. So we also have to remember the mayor is saying that she took this statue out so they could focus their attention on policing the south and west sides, which is very critical right now because we had a number of major shootings this week that really need some attention.
No, Courtney's right. I mean, I was just going to, a lot of this also is about the police. I mean, remember the police were at this statue and getting pelted according to the police, they were getting pelted by certain protesters. So, if you're going to have police sitting there guarding this statue, in a way, this was also Lightfoot's way of protecting the police department as well.
Yes, it's removing a flashpoint. And I think if she had gone another night without doing it, you risk more people getting hurt, not just police, but also when the police respond, sometimes some of the protesters got hurt. So I think it just took out one element. Better to take the anger of the people who don't like it happening than to have actual people in the hospital because of it.
Now, after major pushback by Mayor Lightfoot against sending in so-called paramilitary agents like those in Portland, President Trump is sending additional FBI, DEA, ATF, and other federal agents from other agencies to help with Chicago's pervasive violence problem. Now, that led to a war of words between the two leaders. Let's hear some of what was said this week.
The cities, unfortunately, that are in trouble are all run by Democrats. You have radical left Democrats running cities like Chicago and so many others that we just had a news conference. And unfortunately, that's the way it is.
There's an ample opportunity for him to be in partnership with mayors of all stripes, every party, every geography, every size. But he doesn't care. He fundamentally doesn't care. He doesn't get it. What he cares most about is himself.
Now, there was a lot of back and forth about this week and what kind of federal support would the city be getting. But is there still suspicion that this beefing up of federal agents in Chicago is going to lead to something like what happened in Portland? Sarah Schulte?
Well,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that people definitely have to question President Trump's motives here. And Mayor Lightfoot has said to protesters or people out there, if you see agents, call in. So, I mean, certainly she's certainly well aware of it too. But, I think the key here is U.S. Attorney John Lausch. He worked with Lori Lightfoot in the prosecutor's office. I think he is the one that convinced her that it is okay for more federal agents to come here. And what they're going to do here is they are going to help with the violence problem.
No,
and
Greg,
in some
go
ways,
ahead, Greg.
The federal agents, having more of them here is exactly what the mayor actually has been asking for months. She has always said, if he's serious about this, send us more help investigating. So in some ways, this was a clear, direct response to what she wanted. So I don't think she could have said no, even if she wanted to, because this is what you want. The worry for her, as Sarah says, is that something else will come behind this. And that's what they're watching out for.
And this is the clear antithesis of what the protesters wanted. So we have this police culture that is trying to be pared down and amended and addressed at this point. And here we are bringing in more federal agents. Now, it's a double-edged sword. I'm not saying that bringing in these federal agents are wrong, but the community is divided over this topic. I covered that funeral where 15 people were shot coming out of this funeral. And there were people on that block that want to see the feds come in because they can't walk to the grocery store. They can't walk to the laundromat. Their children cannot play outside. And those children, there were children at that funeral. There were several children. I saw the videos where they were running for cover in their cars. So you have this protesters wanting to pare down the police culture and address it and address the racism. But at the same time, you have people living in fear in these communities and they are calling out for help. They are desperate for a change. Something has got to give because so many people are getting killed on the south and west sides, and this can all be prevented.
And let's go ahead.
With the feds is federal crimes. So some of these guys can now be charged with federal gun crimes, which is definitely what they'd rather have than have them charged at the state level.
Let's go ahead and get into that mass shooting that happened at that funeral in Auburn Gresham Tuesday night. 15 people shot. Superintendent David Brown says that they had 2 squad cars in the area as well as a tactical team in case of retaliation. He's coming up on 100 days on the job. Craig, did he assume the job at the worst possible time that anybody could have assumed it, or should the mayor be expecting better performance out of him?
Well, I think the timing and coming, he had to come when he had to come, but yes, things couldn't be worse for the police department right now. But I think the question is going to be, what were the police who were on the scene expecting? How could they be caught off guard when these shootings happen right under their noses, But, someone said to me earlier this week, they may have thought the job was just a matter of parking, that if you're there, nothing's going to happen. And we're dealing with a whole different type of gang member these days where they just don't care. And they don't care about shooting into crowds. They don't care about shooting right in front of police officers. And I think they were simply caught off guard.
In fact,
this is well
and
known.
outgunned.
I was just going to say, it was well known that in the community, because I saw it all over social media, there were multiple people that said that there were threats to shoot up this funeral. This was no secret. Many people took this information to Chicago police, and perhaps this is the reason that the superintendent says he had 2 cars and a tactical team nearby. However, we had audio of the radio calls that day. There were police sitting right there, and they were in the line of fire. They were calling that call in. These gang members do not care. It was well known that this was a gang funeral. This gentleman who had the funeral was killed just a week prior in Inglewood. So, this is a problem that definitely needs to be addressed.
I do think at some point this does become a big problem for Superintendent Brown and for Lightfoot, because she sort of ran on a platform of saying that we're going to get violence under control. And so far it's not under control. And I know you can say, well, the COVID-19 and there's other factors, but the truth is that it's not under control. And one of the other things that I'm hearing from a lot of people in communities is that there's also, the summer jobs that young people had many other summers. This summer, they didn't come through like they had before, even though she did announce a summer jobs program. And we do have high unemployment. There's a lot of factors that are feeding into the violence. And, whether she's doing enough, whether it's a question, because she's always said that the solution is not necessarily policing, it's building up communities, but is enough being done to build up communities? I think that becomes a question at her feet at some point.
Let's talk about ethics. As long as we're on it. So state Republican leaders have called for a special Springfield session for lawmakers to address ethics. That's after ComEd settled a bribery scandal for $200 million that named the Speaker of the Illinois House, Michael Madigan, as public official A in the deal with federal prosecutors. Here's what House Minority Leader Jim Durkin had to say.
We should go back into session immediately to address ethics reform. But the House Democrat caucus needs to make a really important decision, and they need to make a deep dive into what they stand for and whether or not they want to change in leadership.
Now, Craig, the GOP wants to reconsider ComEd legislation, but the idea was rejected by Democrats. Why was that?
I think part of it is that unraveling utility legislation is not something you do with a hatchet, basically. There are too many interconnected parts. So it's something that's fun to say, but you just don't unravel the entire, power structure, literal power structure. But looking back at what kinds of deals were cut, those things, that is going to happen. It will happen, but they're just not going to be able to do it immediately.
How concerned should Mike Madigan be? Sarah Schulte?
I think he should be very concerned. But, I think everyone has to be reminded he hasn't been charged with anything yet. So I think that's probably what he's hanging his hat on right now. But, look, the U.S. Attorney's Office has been awfully busy with public corruption in the last 3 years. So I think he probably should be concerned. Right. What do you think, Craig?
I think I agree with you. And let's face it, the U.S. Attorney and that office is the most deliberate prosecutorial office probably in the country, but certainly in this realm. And if they allowed us to identify public official A, I mean, they didn't just say public official A as they have done in other prosecutions. Right. What they said was public official A, who is the Speaker of the Illinois House. His name doesn't appear, but that is a signal. Who that guy is. Yeah, that is a signal that he is absolutely in our sights. And even if we don't have him yet, this is where we're headed.
And charges may be imminent.
Yeah, we all
and
recall
that's
another
very rare.
famous public official, A. Sorry, I just want to be able to get going to some of the other stuff we've got also, because there's a pandemic. In other news, Chicago is reverting to some stricter COVID-19 restrictions for bars, restaurants, gyms, and personal services. But the Lakefront Trail is fully open today. Meanwhile, Mayor Lightfoot orders visitors from 18 states to quarantine for 2 weeks, and Wisconsin may be next. And CPS students have the option for remote learning in the fall, but the Chicago Teachers Union is pushing for all virtual classes. So if Governor Pritzker warned that it doesn't take long to see a deadly surge in COVID-19 cases, here's a little bit of what he said this week.
You can go from 3% positivity to Arizona's 23% positivity in the blink of an eye. We've been there. Let's not let that happen again.
So, you know, the uptick here, guys, it's not that massive. Courtney, why did the governor give such a dire warning, a dire prediction?
Because we do not want to go back again. You know, these businesses are finally getting open after months of being closed, people being unemployed, people losing paychecks. And now they're threatening, everyone's trying to fall in line. Many of these business owners are trying to follow the rules. And now we're being threatened with going back again. The city of Chicago is already doing that. That happened today. And so indoor bars had to close. If you don't serve food, you had to close today. This is not something we want to do again. This is not something that's good for the economy. And I think that the governor is trying hard to keep us from having to go back again.
Well, and like you said, you know, bars and gyms, you know, they are taking a bit of a step back, but the Lakefront Trail is fully open today. Sarah Karp, is this a mixed message?
Well, you know, we've always heard that outdoors is better than indoors, that if you stand 6 feet away and you're outside, that you're going to be okay. So I don't know how much of it is a mixed message, because they've already been using a lot of the lakefront already. The question is, you know, where are the cases stemming from? And it sounds like it's stemming from, at least the officials think, that it's from like the bars, from the 18 to 25-year-olds that can't help themselves but go into bars and drink their beer and talk to each other. And so I think that's the message that they're trying to get across, is that, you know, go in, sit at a table, eat, stand 6 feet apart. But I know I've seen a lot of bars where people are just packed in there like it's, you know, any other Saturday night. So I think that's what they're trying to get some control over.
Well, and Mayor Lightfoot has ordered visitors from 18 states to quarantine for 2 weeks. Wisconsin might be next. But, you know, the mayor said that this cannot be enforced. So, you know, what's the point?
Well, look, you
it's
can't
education. That's
right.
what
I mean,
it is.
You can't enforce people wearing masks either. I mean, unless you're in a private business, but you're not, you know, they don't have the resources to enforce people walking down the street wearing masks. But, you know, I think it's just I mean, it's a big warning for people. And I know people that are taking it seriously, but I don't know if everyone is, but I don't know. But Wisconsin may be a different deal, because there's so many people from Chicago that go to Wisconsin. So maybe that will be the real test, if actually people do self-quarantine voluntarily.
Yeah. She did say that Allison Arwitty from the Department of Health did say that if somebody, like, let's say they see an outbreak and then they find out the person who caused the outbreak came from like Florida or Georgia or something, then they could find that person. So I don't know if people realize that, but I guess they could do that. I haven't heard of them doing it.
There could be repercussions. So as the city tightens COVID-19 restrictions, the Chicago Teachers Union is pushing CPS leaders to implement an all-remote learning start to the school year. Here's what we heard from both the district and the union this week.
Actions will be put into place that close down bars because, quote, young people are irresponsible. But we're supposed to believe that we can open up entire school communities.
Any plan that we put in place will be guided by the science, and that we will not make a decision to have students return to school if we don't believe it's safe and we don't believe we have the resources in order to make sure our schools are safe.
Sarah Karp, let's start with you, of course. How can city leaders explain, you know, restricting bars but opening schools, as we heard Stacey Davis Gates just mention?
Well, I think that if you listen really closely to Dr. Jackson, she's very clear that the decision has not been made. And I really feel like as things become clear, the decision will be made that probably they'll go remote. I mean, I don't have any inside knowledge of this, but I mean, if you listen to her, to what she says, it's not just the science that she's talking about, but she's also talking about the resources. So if they don't think that they have enough, you know, resources, hand sanitizer, masks. You know, they announced when they announced this hybrid plan, they said they have 40,000 containers of hand sanitizer. But then, you know, 2 minutes later, the teachers were like, well, there's 20,000 teachers. So that's like, what, 2 hand sanitizer containers per teacher? And that's going to last, what, like 3 weeks? So, you know, there are questions coming up. And I do think that there's a real desire by Chicago public school officials to have kids in school. They presented some data this week that showed that remote learning did not go very well for a whole lot of kids. And I think they're, you know, really, really worried about learning loss. But at the same time, they're going to have to listen to the science, and it might be begrudgingly, but I think that they will.
And CTU has even acknowledged that, to say that remote learning is not the best option, but they're also saying, how many deaths are we willing to sign off on by allowing the teachers and these students back into school? So you're talking about adults that can't even wear masks and follow the rules. So how do we expect 5, 6, and 7-year-olds to go to school, wear masks all day, and social distance from their peers? I just don't think that's going to happen. And so they have to come up with a plan that's going to work. And granted the fact there are so many resources that come with going to school. You're talking about lunch and different things like that. And just the fact of being around your peers and talking to others, and that's needed. Children need that. But we're talking about a deadly virus that there is no cure for at the moment.
Real quick, go ahead, Craig. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say quickly that there are some cautionary signals out there too, because up in Lake Zurich, 36 students tested positive for the coronavirus, and we're talking about a sports team, and this is before school has actually started. And I talked yesterday to the state school superintendent, where she says local districts are going to have to make decisions based on what's happening, and they're given the flexibility to decide all remote or not at all. So I think you're going to see more people making decisions about, you know, whether they should go forward or not.
Yeah, it's going to be a very tough call for a lot of parents. We are actually out of time, though. My apologies. My thanks, though, to Craig Zellimore, Courtney Gooseman, Sarah Schulte, and Sarah Karp. Thanks to all of you. And that's our show for this Friday night. Don't forget, you can get Chicago Tonight and the Week in Review streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. And join us next week live at 7. A look at Police Superintendent David Brown's first 100 days on the job, and how hot weather, high lake levels, and closed beaches may be increasing the risk for drowning in Chicago. Now for the Week in Review, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud of its partners named Illinois Leading Lawyers by the Law Bulletin Publishing Company of Chicago.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank
You know,
you.
the biggest difference